consider myself a very fortunate person. I was happy in my own ways, and I do not feel, I don't know about as strongly as issues that you mentioned in the 90s.
Late
90s. So
maybe Grace will be able to say something on that quite directly.
Who are the publishers that publish poetry in?
Yours was Frank, right?
No, but who the Landmark?
Landmark, Ethos. That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it.
Because First Fruits.
First Fruit came later.
Just a little bit, like, because Serial was.
Oh yeah, no. Sorry.
In...
Shu Hong published with First Fruits. He was the first.
Right.
So it was 97, I think, for them.
Yeah.
So that was one book by.
Yeah,
First
and then after Serial was in the same article. So,
yes.
So I mean, for me, I just chanced upon a publisher who actually does how-to books, and he wanted to diversify. So I said, okay. So I showed him the thing. He said he doesn't understand. I said, okay. I mean, it was concrete poetry jumping all over the page. He said, all right. So I said, okay, let's do it. And I mean, one of the, I know that my collection has been critiqued as that it needed some heavy editing, but he didn't have an editor and he doesn't know poetry. So in a sense that, for good or for worse, that I put everything that I had in there that I thought was interesting. So I know it was not the most well-edited collection, but I suppose my energy was completely out there on the book because the publisher didn't know any better. So that was it. And then
what made you want to write then?
I always wrote. It was compilation of really poems from my teen years to my late 20s.
Did you think about Singaporean literature like he was saying just now? Did you even think about like wanting to write like?
Okay, I mean just before the publication of the book in '98, in '97, I took my first major trip to Europe and I went to to London and a few other places, and I suppose venturing out on my own with a backpack was like a big shock to the system. So that was where some of the post-colonial stuff came out. But I wasn't really thinking about Singapore and how I want to write a great Singapore poem. I never thought of that. It was never in my consciousness. I wasn't really interested. I was always exploring my own voice, my own interest and identity. So, I mean, of course, at the back of my mind, Raffles and all the stuff that we grew up with, that I needed to de-brainwash myself. I mean, it's true. I mean, like, motherland, let's go and look at, and like, hey, I mean, I'm called Oriental and I hated it, and I spent my master's year just hating it and just telling everybody, don't use the word on me, don't use the old word, and and all that stuff. So now I'm just eased off that anxiety, but it was never something that I wanted to write a great Singapore book about.
But it was nonetheless a kind of reality that we had to face in the 90s. There was this thing that existed. And you have to know it, and then you have to consciously say, I don't want to do this.
We inherited a legacy of Singapore literature that was celebrating the Malayan and things of post-colonial identity. So I mean that was the thing. Like, do I want to write about that? Because I don't think I can talk about it much better than the people who have written before me. So why talk about something that either the pioneer poets and Dr. Leong and all that who are writing stuff about that? I mean, why compete when they have already had voices to voice for me? So I talk about stuff I want to talk about, which is about women, sexuality, things like that. My identity as a woman in the postmodern, post-colonial Singapore is hard enough without having to deal with Singapore politics.
Now, I just want to clarify or add something to what Grace said about the Great Singapore Novel or the Great Singapore Poem. I think there are two groups of people here involved, right? I mean, like Grace. I wasn't out to write the Great Singapore Novel or poem, we just write, But there is the group of people up there, the people who fund the, I would say up there because I'm down here, I'm down here. All right, the people who want to put Singapore on the map for literature, for example, and they say we must have this Great Singapore Novel, they see it as a task, all right, a task, that we have to produce that, we can produce that, so let's look for the ingredients and let's try to cook that up. But I don't know whether there are writers who consciously go out and say that I want to write a great Singapore novel. I don't know. All right. So I just write. And I must say that what I mentioned 1980s or 90s, now many years have gone by. I'm nowhere near it, you know. I have failed, you know, in that sense. Okay? That's it.
But you float somehow in the sense. That's what I mean. I mean, you don't have the anxiety that some people continue to have.
Oh, true. That's why I'm lucky. I'm not anxious, and I live life the way. Yeah, I think I'm more like, you know.
How often do you spend the time in Singapore a year?
Many times. Often.
How long?
I don't know.
My imagination is that you are here for just a few weeks. Most of the time.
If I have a chance to travel every week, I'll travel.
Okay, anybody have a question to ask? Anybody else? Yeah, yes. Ashita, yes.
I agree. So what in your opinion makes the new Singaporean poetry are you all as writers actually able to escape that legacy of post-colonial literature? What do you think?
Entails reading them.
Well, I don't know. What do you mean? Whether we can escape the reality of post-colonial literature?
Well, one thing that perhaps I misheard when Grace was talking earlier, and things like the Merlion and Stamford Ruffles, you want to move away from that. But then what makes a Singapore poem? Is it written in Singlish? Does it talk about kopitiam? What makes the new Singapore poetry? I'm just really interested. I'd like to know.
I think the point here that they were saying just now, if I may just quickly paraphrase this, is that I don't think they think about those issues, you know, because the point is to set aside this so that they can write about the poetry they want to write about. To keep harping on the Singaporean poetry or the Singaporean novel actually in many ways restricts what you want to do as an artist. If I get that from the sense from both of you.
Yeah, because I mean, you are. That's the hardest question to answer. For a writer, as long as you set a parameter or a frame, I think you can't go out anymore. So if I have to set up and say and tell myself that what is the Singaporeanness of myself? How the hell do I answer that? I mean, I'm flesh and blood, I'm human, I'm a mother. So I start writing from one urge, and then the urge goes to another urge. If it happens that the whole urges touch upon an imagery of Singaporeanness, then good. If it doesn't, then I just wrote a poem full of urges that may not fall within this frame. I'm not trying to be overly elliptical, but it's hard to say that today I'm going to paint Cornwall, or I am going to, then you're like, what constitutes Cornwall? Or I'm going to write about the Esplanade. Then your brain freezes up. Once your brain freezes up, you're going to write contrived stuff. So I don't know about other poets, because Cyril is nodding to what I'm saying. So I think we start with one step, the pebble, and then we keep taking the steps until it finishes the journey. And then we step back 1 week later and we see, is there anything there that I recognize? Well, I recognize, a theme about maternity, or a theme about sex, or a theme about lust, or a theme about hopelessness. So, if it happens to be an Ubin, there's like, oh, really? I wrote about Ubin, and I didn't realize that I thought I was talking about something else.
I mentioned this, that what is it to write Singapore, right? And I'm not so sure that, when writers joined hands in the recent years to be anti-colonial, whether that really makes you Singaporean, I think I am as much a Singaporean these days as I was. I was schooled in English literature. It was all Wordsworth and Shakespeare and, Joyce, and I love them all. But I find myself increasingly enjoying Indian literature. I like Irish literature, and I think to me, first of all, yes, it is an Irish setting, but it is a great book. That to me comes across. so is the Indian literature. And they said in Singapore, what can we write about? There isn't anything that can make it great. I'm not so sure. So at the writers' workshop, you know, someone will come and say that I'm going to write a novel, and it's going to be the Amish community in America. So, I mean,
Why not?
why not? Right? Must it be Singaporean? I mean, if you know well enough and you think you have a great story there, all right, write about it. Made in Singapore about the Amish community. Right?
Okay. Any questions? Anyone? Yes.
I was just about to, before you said that, I was about to ask you, what do you like to read? What's exciting to you?
Yep. I think we can have them both answer this question. Yeah. What you like to read? What are the influences, perhaps?
Yeah. Or where is
Where do you draw inspiration?
Where are you getting energy at the moment? Yeah.
What do I like? I read all sorts of things actually. I find myself drawn now to ethnic literature. I find that I've been schooled, as I said, in English literature. There's so much more outside that, you know. I mean, I still love my Fosters and you know, things like that. And I gravitate a lot towards Indian literature somehow, and Irish literature, as I said. And increasingly, I'm looking at South American literature. You know, that seems a bit heavy for me, but I'm trying to go down that path. Right? But at the same time, I find that life is too short. For what I'm doing, I sometimes find that I don't have time to read such books because I have to read about what's happening to the airlines today, to the airports, and right. Hopefully doesn't pay me for the writing that much, but I get money from that other source, you know, because that was my work. I worked in the airline industry before I retired. So, you know, and I want to keep myself updated on what's happening around the world, you know, right? Issues about about the environment, you know, I'm very much into that, cruelty to animals, you know, things like that, and I blog about that, you know, because I feel strongly about such issues, you know, things like, you know, should we be eating shark's fins, you know? All right,
Yeah,
but
should we?
we should not. No, the question about eating shark's fins is this, you know. Many people say that we shouldn't be eating shark's fins because it's an endangered species. I agree, but I go beyond that, and I was very upset when I read about how a casino in Singapore has decided to join in in saving the sharks, but on one condition: the high rollers can eat shark's fins. Then I said, what is that? So I think about that issue. I mean, that's all about why are we different, you know? How is it that high rollers can eat shark's fins but not the common people? You know? So, but I say no shark's fins, right? No whale killing, and I always try to divorce myself from feeling anti-Japanese just because they are out there, you know, killing the whales. So, some issues interest me.
How about Grace? The books that you read?
Well, I'm a mother of two small kids, you know, 1, 2 years old and 5 years old. So before the residency came along, I was exclusively taking care of them. So it's hardly any time to read. But since the residency, I've read a few books, so I think that's what I could tell you. But I mean, I'm a big Silver Plough fan. That comes from early days. But for the novels, the last three things that really moved me, well, Milan Kundera, all his books, I love it. I love his voice. So that's one of my influences. I aspire to write the kid. I mean, I am doing the novel now, so I mean, I don't know what the composite voices will come through. The last book that I read is Surfacing by Margaret Atwood, Love of Poeticism. And the last book that I read too was Julian Barnes' Sense of an Ending, Love is Language. So yeah, I mean, it's just an eclectic picture of what I read. And I'm a big movie buff, so a lot of things in my poetry are also very imagistic because it comes from me, being very visual. And I love music, not the classical type, but more pop and rock, and I'm a big rock fan. So yeah, I like music with a lot of bass. So in that sense, rhythm comes across very strongly in my poetry as well. And yeah.
You mentioned about living out your luggage for a long time. What book do you carry around with you?
Okay, I used to carry books and I stopped because they were so heavy. When you have kids, then toys are more important. I can tell you.
So no books, just toys?
But on the internet you can always read e-books. You can, everything's on the internet. Thank God for internet. Music I used to carry, tons of. And then you remove the cases and you have the CDs and they're still heavy. Then you discard it, you put it on an iPod, yay, that's it. You travel light, so yeah,
If you like ethnic literature, I think I recommend people like Joseph Boyden, First Native writers, Canadian First Native.
Okay, while you're thinking of questions, what I want to do now is actually read a poem from each of them. Specifically a poem that I find I like a lot from the poems I like from each book. From Cordelia, I thought, she, even though I hinted to her quite strongly that I really like her love poems, she didn't pick this one. I thought you might guess, but
I don't know.
I'm going to read a poem called Partners.
Oh.
When are we going to get married? Never, the man teases, and then lunges towards the woman. They tussle like kids, baby talk. In a minute, the rose will be ready. When are we going to get married? Never, the man jokes, and then reaches for the remote. They sit in solemn silence, eyes on the screen. In a minute, the movie will be starting. When are we going to get married? Never, the man laughs, and then takes a deep puff. They squint in each other across the summer sun. In a minute, the kettle will boil. When are we going to get married? Never, the man utters, and then looks a bit bored. They hug tightly, squeezing, two hearts beating in synchrony. In a minute, the hug will be over. When are we going to get married? Never, the man sighs, and then opens the door. They freeze at each end. The corridor becomes a mile long. In a minute, the door will slam shut. Why are you laughing? I feel very sad. When I finish this poem, I kind of felt, no, it really is a very strong poem in that sense for me. Now this one you can have.
You've been asking that question.
Huh?
You've been asking that question.
No. Oh, I see. Is that why you kind of think that this is personal? Right. For David, this poem I like partly because the first thing that draws my attention is how the title resembles my book, Man, Born Free, but it's called Man, Dog, Bird. And I thought it was a very cute poem. It goes like this. The dog chases after the nestling, a chilling bark before the kill. The baby fumbles and tumbles, scrambling for dear life. Its mother hovers above, frantic calls to stay the pursuer. I run madly after the dog. No, Toby, no! Man, dog, bird. We have only one story to tell. The same story, different size. Different size.